Hi everyone, Jessica here and welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to give myself a little bit of a card making challenge. So what I'm going to be challenging myself is to use one colour for my cards. So we'll be still using obviously black and white, but it'll just be one sort of primary colour just to see if I can keep it really nice and simple. So for this particular card, I've decided to pick yellow. So we're going to create a watercolour background, and it's going to be just using sort of different shades of yellow. So the size card that I'm going to be making is sort of roughly 6 by 4 inch. So I've cut some 300 GSM watercolour cardstock down, and I'm just sort of taping it to this board. Mainly two reasons why I'm taping this down. One is because I don't want my paper to sort of bow. I want to keep it as flat as I possibly can. And the other reason is I wanted to create sort of a really fun shaped background. So as you can see, I've sort of stuck my tape down at angles. So this will sort of give me a really nice sort of bit of obscure sort of shaped background. So you can see here, I'm just using really basic watercolours, really nothing special, not an expensive set, but they work perfectly fine. And I've just put some water, so I've done a bit of a water wash on my background, and then I'm going to be able to put down sort of my first layer of colour. So I want to create a really quick and easy background here. So what I'm going to be doing is just kind of layering up this watercolour paint. So I'm going to dry it in between the layers. I want to get a really nice sort of depth of colour in here. I'm not going to sort of be too worried about covering the whole of my background with the watercolour. I want there to be sort of some really noticeable differences. So you can see I'm sort of, some of the areas are sort of a lot more heavier with the yellow paint, and others are a lot lighter, and that's what I want. I want it to be something a little bit interesting, but just a really simple background. So all we're going to do now is just heat set this first layer, and then that will be able to create us the depth of colour and allow us to get lots of different sort of layers in there. So you can see the kind of brush that I'm using. It's just sort of a flat, sort of wide-ish brush. And this I'm just using to almost create the pattern of my background. So I'm sort of using the width of the brush to create these kind of brush strokes on there. And again, you can see the difference between the first layer that we've done and now this second layer, and it's really just helping to build that colour up. You can also see some of the sections where I've not put a lot of colour down. Like I said, you've still got that white showing through, and this just sort of help sort of give it a little bit more interest with it just being sort of one colour. But we are going to put a couple of different sort of shades of yellow in. So all I'm going to do now is just mix this like really bright yellow with this kind of, it's like a dark yellow, almost like a brown colour, and that's just going to create us a different shade of yellow, again just to give the background a little bit more interest and a little bit more depth of colour. I really love creating these sort of really quick and easy watercolour backgrounds. You don't have to be a fantastic painter or anything like that. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake, because it's all just sort of part of the sort of background design. I think it's just such a lovely way to create sort of handmade backgrounds. Again, really quick and easy. So you can see now we're using this darker shade of yellow, and again it's just sort of added a little bit more interest into our background. So again, between every layer I'm just heat setting it, and that's really sort of building these different layers up. And like I said, you can see those first layers really pale, almost white colour, and I think it just really creates a really fantastic background. So to finish this background off, and again just make it that little bit more interesting, I'm just going to take this sort of dark yellow sort of slash brown colour, and I'm just going to do some paint splats. So I'm going to sort of water this down and create a nice puddle on this acrylic block, and that allows me to sort of flick it off the edge of the acrylic block and get these nice sort of paint splatter effect. And I really love doing this. I think, again, it just sort of finishes the background off really nicely, and sort of goes with that sort of painting sort of theme background. So I have just heat set this just so it's all nice and dry, and we can go ahead and put together the rest of our card. So you can see really easily just peeling off this purple tape, and you can see that we've created a really sort of fun shaped background on our watercolour cardstock. And again, it'll just make the card sort of a little bit more interesting and a little bit more sort of artistic. So I do end up cutting this down. You can see the top and the bottom, obviously we've got sort of big chunks of white. I do end up chopping this down just a little bit so it kind of evens out more with the sides. So I really love the way that this background came out, and I didn't want to sort of cover too much of it up with a sentiment or an image to go on top. So I decided to pick this butterfly stamp. So this is a Crafter's Companion stamp. It's actually a set of 3 layering stamps called Majestic Butterfly. But I just thought if I stamped this directly onto our background, again, it would show through the butterfly image, because again, I didn't want to sort of cover up that really nice background. So because this is a watercolour cardstock that I'm using, I've put it in the stamping platform because it does take quite a few stamps to get that really nice solid black butterfly image, just because the paper is textured. So if you do have a stamping platform, I would recommend using it. Like I said, this did take me quite a few stamps to get the image that you're seeing now. So the next thing we do, just to finish this card off, is just to pop a sentiment on it. So I'm just going to white heat emboss a sentiment onto some black cardstock. So I'm just using my anti-static tool just to make sure that the embossing powder doesn't stick anywhere other than my stamped image. I'm going to be stamping in this seafoam white colour. So the stamp I'm going to use is from that same stamp set, and this is a really lovely stamp set. They've got some really lovely sentiments. So this says beautiful like a butterfly. And like I said, I'm just going to heat emboss this. So we're just going to use some clear embossing ink, and then we will be able to pour our embossing powder directly on top of it, and then we can get that heat set. So if you are new to heat embossing, I'll pop a link up in the corner. You can check that video out for sort of the best ways of heat embossing, the tools, things that you need. So you can check that out there. So you can see here that we're just melting this white embossing powder, and then it'll be ready for us to cut down and pop onto our card. Once we've heat set this, we're going to go ahead and just cut it down a little bit, and then we can find the perfect placement for it on our card. So just to give the card a little bit of dimension, I'm just going to pop a foam pad behind it just to sort of raise it up and, like I said, give it a little bit more interest, a little bit more dimension. So I'm just going to pop it to the right hand side. Again, I don't want to cover up the butterfly too much, but equally I don't want to cover up the background too much either. And I really love sort of putting a sentiment sort of right on the edge of the card. So what I'm going to do now is just stick it down to a 6x4" blank card base, and then that is our card done. I really love how this card came out. I love the background on it, and the fact that I've chosen to only use one primary colour, I think was worked really well. It allows me to kind of be a little bit more creative and not sort of trying to put lots of different colours together, just sort of using a really basic colour palette, and I think it creates a really, really beautiful card. So that's it for today's video. If you liked it, then please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.